Many of you may remember, sisters and brothers, that the priest who inspired me when I was knee-high to a grasshopper inspired me to consider the ministerial priesthood, a vocation to be a priest, was Father John Tackerberry. Oh, as my parents used to call him, Old Tack, you see. Even though he was from Missouri, from St. Louis, we would like him anyway. He was very involved with Marriage Encounter, and my parents were very involved with Marriage Encounter. So whenever Old Tack visited the old country, yes, Long Island, he would stay with us. And Saint Paul, Father John Tackerberry was a member of the Congregation of the Mission, as they call them, the Vincentians, named after they are of their founder, St. Vincent de Paul. And as it happens, St. Vincent de Paul's feast day was yesterday, September 27th. And so we had an opportunity to consider the example and the work and the charism of St. Vincent de Paul. He wrote that if you consider the poor, because St. Vincent de Paul, like so many saints over the past 2,000 years, recognized our duty to the poor, made it part of their charism. So did St. Vincent de Paul. He wrote, if you consider the poor in the light of faith, then you will observe that they are taking the place of the Son of God, who chose to be poor. It's difficult for us to hear that these days, don't we, sisters and brothers? We are told to believe. Often we want to believe that the poor get what they deserve, and the rich get what they deserve. The poor, we are told, the poor are losers that get what they deserve, and the rich are winners who get what they deserve. And so it seems, sisters and brothers, that Jesus seems to agree, but not in the way that the people who heard this parable in the first time around expected. Jesus seems to agree, but not the way we expect. We expect when we see a man dressed in purple garments and fine linen and dining sumptuously each day, that he deserves that. By virtue, by industry, he earns that. He's a winner. So we're not bothered to see him lying on beds of ivory, stretched comfortably on couches. And we see someone like Lazarus covered with sores, who would gladly have eaten his fill of the scraps that fall from the rich's table. And we say that's a loser. He gets what he deserves in his hunger, in his pain, in his loneliness, in his destitution. Side comment. You know, you biblical scholars will have recognized, the parables of Jesus quite well, right? You know this is the only time, of course, that we hear someone named in the parable. Last week, we heard about the dishonest steward and his master, and his clients. We hear about the younger brother and the older brother. We hear about the father of the house. We hear about the farmer. We hear about the housewife. We hear about the shepherd. Today we hear someone named Lazarus. Not to be confused, I don't think, with with Jesus' buddy in Bethany, whom we know so well. Lazarus, Greek form of the Hebrew name Eleazar, and the Hebrew named Eleazar, meaning God is my help, which is all the more all the more confusing because it does not seem, sitting on the gates in hunger and pain and poverty, that God is helping him much. But in the end, he does, doesn't he? We hear that Lazarus is carried away by angels to the bosom of Abraham. And in the end, he got what he deserved. And the rich man, the winner, found himself in the netherworld where he was in torment. And in the end, he got what he deserved. We are told to believe, sisters and brothers, sometimes we want to believe that the poor only really matter when they become useful to us. How is it not new, is it? How we know the rich man, even in the afterlife, was so entitled after a lifetime of stepping over Lazarus at his gate, stepping over the disease and the hunger and the destitution and the loneliness, felt entitled to ask Abraham to send Lazarus to the dip of his to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool his tongue. How entitled is a rich man to ask Abraham to send Lazarus to his father's house, where he has 5 brothers, so he can warn them. After all that time, all that opportunity, not even noticing, not even offering scraps from his table, the rich man felt emboldened enough to send Lazarus on errands for him. No, sisters and brothers, we are called to pursue righteousness, devotion, faith, love, patience, and gentleness. We are called to compete well for the faith. We are called to participate in Christ's work to secure justice for the oppressed, to give food to the hungry. St. Vincent de Paul goes on to teach that it is our duty to prefer the service to the poor to everything else, and to offer such service as quickly as possible. So being followers of Christ, sisters and brothers, we recognize not only in our material generosity, which is important, yeah, but also in our hearts, in our affection, in our advocacy, care for all those we find at the gates with no one to care for, the homeless, the mentally ill, the imprisoned, the preborn, the refugee, so that with them we too may be heirs of the treasures of heaven and rest in the bosom of Abraham. Praise be Jesus Christ, now and forever.